Hi everyone, Eager Zebra here. Today's video is going to be about canning and the process that I go through to make pasta sauce out of the tomatoes fresh from my garden. I don't really have a way in my kitchen to set up to record as I'm doing, so I took pictures as I went and thought I would do like a voiceover for each picture of each step that I go through to explain. And hopefully this works out. And maybe in the future, if interested, I can look more into a way of recording me actually doing it. I like using the Mrs. Wages pasta sauce. I really enjoy using this packet and it does really well for what I need it to do. I really like them. It's a very simple process and it gives me all the seasonings I would need. Now eventually in the future, I wouldn't mind like doing my own seasonings and doing that step. But for right now, this is a great way of doing it to make the process a lot easier. Alright, and then here is a picture of the back of the package. And this kind of lets you know like how many tomatoes you need, sugar, and then the sauce packet, of course. And this also gives you the instructions on how to do it. And it also gives you the options of going ahead and serving it, freezing it, or going through the canning process, which we'll be doing that. So our focus will be on the canning portion. So I'll take you through each step of how I do this. Alright, in this picture, the first thing I do is I gather all the tomatoes that I'm going to be working with and getting them all into a bowl. I didn't have enough room in a bowl, so I had some on the counter as well. But the goal is to get all the tomatoes that you're going to be using and gather them all together. Right. And once you get all your tomatoes gathered, the next step is to go through and wash your tomatoes. Rinse them off. I leave mine once they're ready, just leaving them in my dish drainer so they can drip dry and the water goes into my sink and I'll have another bowl to use. But that's your next step, is to wash your tomatoes. Alright, so your next step, you're going to get a pot of boiling water going. And once it's boiling, you're going to put a couple of tomatoes in there. I usually do maybe 5 or so, depending, because you don't want your water to overflow. And then you're going to leave them in there for about 3 minutes. Now, before you put your tomatoes in the water, you want to take the bottom of your tomato and make cut an X. Like it's just a slight little X to your tomato. This way, when you go to peel them later, the skin will peel off of them a little easier and make it easier on you in the future. On the future step, when you remove their tomato skin. But you'll do this about 3 minutes. And while your first batch of tomatoes is in the pot, getting warm, getting their skin loose, you want to prepare a bowl of ice water for an ice bath. And here in the top corner, if you see the very top one where it has like that X cut in it, that's what I was talking about doing. It helps you later to remove the skin from the tomato. Like I said, you don't have to cut very deep, just a little bit, and do like an X. Trust me, it will help. It helps. And it does for me to remove. And you're going to let them sit in there probably about 3 minutes as well. So I usually will have one pot that's boiling water and I'll have some in the ice bath. And then once that 3 minutes is up, I remove these out of the ice bath into another bowl to let them sit while I get the next ones going and moving until I have completed this step for all tomatoes. So I keep doing that until I have them all done, and then I have a bowl of tomatoes where you can see here where their skin is starting to peel. I usually will just, like I said, go through, just get them all done to get them to this step to have that done. Okay. So your next step you're going to want to do is to remove the skin and cut the core out of the tomato. You want to cut the core out, remove the skin, and then you want to inspect the tomato for any kind of like bad spots that you can cut out of the tomato. And you'll just keep cutting the bad spot until you don't see it anymore. But if it's a tomato and you're crushing it, leave it to the side. I usually will have like a bowl that will be for the bowl that I'll put all my tomatoes in once I deskin them and core them to a separate bowl. And then I have a smaller bowl for like the skin or any tomatoes that didn't cut it, or any some tomatoes I have to cut in half and the other half is fine to use, but I usually have like a scrap bowl just to help keep organization for it. But once you get to this step, I just have them all bowled up and I can do this cutting and coring and removing the skin process. Okay. Alright, your next step is to be able to put them in a food processor or a blender, and this way you can just blend it up and start making your actual liquid now for your pasta sauce, which will look like this. It's basically just like tomato soup juice. And then you'll pour this into a skillet that is not warm. Just a skillet that's on the stove, and you will do this until all your tomatoes have been blended up. Alright, so when you're done blending all your tomatoes, it should look like something like this on your skillet. And I'm sorry that my stove is dirty. I did not clean it before doing this. And some of that could have been from this too. But you want to pour them in your skillet like that. Okay. And then you want to add the sauce packet, the pasta sauce mix into this, and your sugar. Now, I did not add the sugar into this batch. I've been making no sugar pasta sauce, just a way to cut back on some sugar. So I did include it. I like it with or without the sugar in it. I think it tastes great either way, but you don't have to use it if you don't want to. But this batch was my no sugar batch. Alright, once you get all your extra ingredients mixed in, get it mixing up really well, and then you're going to bring the mixture to a boil. Now while you're bringing it to a boil, you want to stir it on occasion, because I have known with this sauce packet, sometimes it wants to like clamp up a little bit, so you want to stir it to kind of break it up and also so it doesn't stick at the bottom of your skillet. So once it has been to a boil, once you get it boiling, you want to reduce the heat and then simmer it for 25 minutes. So normally while I'm waiting for this to come to a boil and for it to start to simmer, I would get my jars ready in my oven. And I'll get them, I believe, put around, I think this recipe, I can't remember how many it makes. I usually get around 4 quarts. Of course, this also depends how many tomatoes you're putting in it. I usually roughly get around 4 quarts. I usually put 10 jars in, just so I have extra jars just in case. But during that time, I will put my jars in my oven, and then I'll get my oven heated up to 200 degrees. And once it reaches 200 degrees, you want to set a timer for 20 minutes, because you at least want your jars to heat up in the oven for 20 minutes. And usually by the time I get this boiling and my jars heated up, usually they match up well in time. Time the simmering's done and the oven's heated up for that time. It usually matches up and there's not much like delay between the two. But you want to make sure the jars have heated up for 20 minutes before using. And this will help get your jars warm to where when you pour the liquid in them, that they don't buzz or crack. And also having your jars in the oven also will sterilize them as well. Alright, this is my big cannon pot. Also during this time you want to start heating this jar up full of water. This pot full of water, sorry. I start pouring it up. I usually try to get it above where the rack is, just slightly, because you are going to be adding jars to it. So when you add and you put them in, it's going to make the water raise. And you can always add more water. It's easier to add more water than take away water, especially when you're going to get this hot. And as you also can tell in the back, I have my oven started to preheat. But you want to start getting this pot starting to warm up, because this is where the jars will go for their hot water cannon bath. Okay, so I did forget to take a picture of the jars actually in the hot water canner. I did forget to do that. I apologize. And I also forgot to mention that you want your cannon lids, you want them to also be in a water. I usually put like a little pot of water and heat the lids up to get them sterilized as well for this. The rings, I just make sure they're clean, they've been washed. And you want to be careful pouring up. You do want to leave some head space in there So this one, I got 3 full quarts, and then I had like a partial on the 4th. So then you want to get them into the hot, you fill them up and get them into the hot water bath. And you want to process them for 40 minutes covered. During that time frame. And then once you are done, you want to be super careful of pulling them out of the jar. I have little jar grabbers that I like to use. And then you want to leave them sitting down. I usually put like 2 kitchen towels down, pull them out, let them sit there, and you at least want them sit there for at least 24 hours before touching or moving them so they can properly seal. And the one amazing thing that I love after finished canning is when you hear the jars pop when they seal. It is such a satisfying sound, and I love it. So also during this time, you do not want to try to label them. Like I said, you don't want to touch them, you don't want to move them. So usually what I will do is when I'm done, I always take a picture of them, so that way the next day, if I wait a day or two before coming back to label them, I have a picture from when I did it, so I remember what the date was. So I remember when to date it. But that is my process of how I can pasta sauce using the Mrs. Wade pasta sauce. Let me know in future videos you want me to actually try to see if I can set up to where I can actually film actually doing this instead of just pictures. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful for you. I also make pizza sauce as well, so I can also show the process for that. It's pretty much the same, just a different packet. I've also tried pickling in the past. That hasn't really worked well for me, but we have really enjoyed making the pasta sauce and pizza sauce. Let's see what else. I've also made chili base before, and I've also made my own salsa, so I can show you guys that too as well. Let me know in the comments if you have a garden, you do this, or you do canning yourself. Let me know. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye everyone.